Good morning, everyone. Today is Halloween, 10/31/2017. I am in the Berea Clinic. Of course, this is Tuesday. I thought I'd go ahead and take a chance right now to discuss the next gem in our list. It belongs to the river trigram. And the river trigram, traditionally I have labeled it relativity. I don't like using that term as much anymore because of the fact that general relativity is sort of failed. However, let's talk about maybe as terms of appearance, or we could even talk about it in terms of power, and that's going to be what our gem is. So relativity, the idea behind relativity is that things are going to look different depending on which way you're going, which frequency your mind is at. You can have two people that they actually have the same frequency, but they're going in the opposite direction, so they don't see eye to eye. Maybe they're out of phase, and so while one person's up, the other person's down. They could be, of course, completely different frequencies. Maybe one person's similar to the other frequencies, like think of like a fraternity, and some people are getting along and some people are not, and they're all very similar frequency, but there's a little bit of phase shift. So there's a lot of things that can affect the relative position of people. However, when we talk about position, of course, what we're interested in is power. And the term sure in the art of war means the strategic configuration of power. And so we could call this the law of sure. Sure also means, though, momentum, leverage, tendency, propensity, potential. Really, it is a complete description of a power position. And that would mean my ability to extend my influence, even having affluence. Of course, it's also going to imply a certain amount of charm, a certain amount of gravitas, personability, also your reputation, because your reputation goes before you. Your day is almost like kind of laid out before you based on how people think they're going to interact when they meet you. At one time in my life, there were a lot of people who were really jealous and fearful of the power that I was attaining, that I didn't even know I was attaining, apparently. And they moved to attack my reputation before. And so I had to start using the art of war to defend my reputation, and it intimidated a lot of people, but it was absolutely necessary to keep my reputation intact, because you're talking how the ability to feed your family, the ability to get jobs, all those things are predicated upon your position and your advantage. Now at that time, I had a lot less relative position. I had a lot of martial power, but that doesn't mean anything in modern speaking unless you're going to become an MMA fighter. But now I have quite a great position, because I have the ability to go teach. I can teach engineering, I can teach science, I can teach math, I could go teach a foreign language. I teach English to people who speak a foreign language. I could teach this Chinese medicine. I could go in and I could do inventions. I have some experience with markets. I can work with that. So I have a lot of different positions. That's because the laws do bear fruit. I mean, you have to keep working the alchemical furnace for it to bear fruit. Remember, this is natural magic. This is not the kind where you've done ritual magic. Someone was joking a little bit on a Michael Jordan video. We were discussing how did he become so good. Somebody said, well, rumor has it he sold his soul to the devil. Maybe. I mean, the red eyes, it could just be liver fire, and his, driving his ego to be very, very competitive. One thing that Michael Jordan was good at, no matter what, was leveraging from one position to another. He leveraged his basketball into his marketing, and then he leveraged the marketing into future finance. And he never allowed anybody to pull him out of the game of being a professional. No matter what you do, become a professional. Now, setting aside the amateurs, you can divide professionality into two groups: professional amateurs and professional professionals. You don't want to be an amateur professional, okay? So, professional amateur. A professional amateur will typically be someone like, say, a lot of my classmates that I came out of PCOM and doing acupuncture. These are people who, they definitely intend to be professionals in terms of seeing people and everything, but they're never going to make money because they don't understand what it means to be a professional. And being a professional is an energy wave. It is a certain maturity. It is a certain thing you carry. You don't allow things like drama to get in the way. And believe me, I had enough professional amateurs and enough amateur professionals come through the business who, I thought were going to go hither or thither and actually help to promote the business. and they wanted to make it about them. And so at that time, you use the art of war to protect the business. Protecting your livelihood, protecting your career, protecting your reputation, those are things that are going to absolutely affect your position. I know all this sounds really shallow, but you got to understand that the river trigram also corresponds to the abyss, which means it corresponds to danger. When you live in a world as shallow and materialistic as the one we have now, and when you live in a society that is as predicated upon appearances as the one we have, you cannot take it none too seriously. I just did this festival. It was the Suan Festival, I think is what it was called, and I did Taiji. I did the Taiji sword with the scabbard. I didn't have anybody to record what I did, but anyways, I was there, and there were all these people, and they, a lot of them practice actual ritual magic, and guess what? A lot of them looked aged, and then some of them, when I observed, they drove very, very poor cars. It looked like their life was harder than it had to be. If you're practicing magic and your life is harder than it has to be, I mean, my life, everybody's life has challenges, right? My challenge is I have too much richness. Like, my son has too much opportunity, so I need to actually make his life difficult in order so that he doesn't grow up spoiled. My kids have too much opportunity in terms of like material goodness, so to make sure that they don't become like overweight, lazy, etc., I have to constantly reduce them, constantly push away, constantly get things out. But overall, I don't have any kind of real terms of lack. I mean, I have 2 clinics. So this natural magic method does work, but it requires constantly working these laws. And when you talk about the river, which is a yang line between 2 yin lines, as if you're on a raft inside the river, you have to respect the position that you're in. If you can notify in your mind where position you're at, if you can find the relative placement on the quote map that you are at right now, then you can make changes to your sure. But you can't before that, right? It's guesswork otherwise. If you don't know your relative position, then you don't know what you're really doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, then you can't know what you're really capable of. You can have some idea, like, I might be capable of dunking, but just because I'm capable of dunking doesn't mean that I'm going to become an NBA player. You have to be honest about your current position, and then you can take steps to mitigate that and to expand on it. And if you want to be able to apply leverage at a distance, here are some general rules. 1, avoid applying leverage to anybody that's not worth your energy. If your chi is limited and your essence is limited, and your willpower is, of course, derived from those 2 things, don't waste it on people that aren't worth it. Don't waste it on people that you're trying to keep. You want them to be happy. Like, why do you want this person to be so happy? Like, you're bending over backwards to help this person out, even. And they're not even helping themselves. You can't do that. Another rule would be don't try and lend your power to someone else, because if you do, chances are good that you're going to incite the ego within them. They're going to just try and steal it. And I know that sounds really crappy, and you're like, oh, humans suck. Well, sometimes they do. Just the way it goes. Here's another thing, and this is, I was talking about this on the way to this clinic, which is an hour away from my home, a little less actually, but I have cars that have power built in. And why? Because I want mobility. I think mobility is an incredibly important thing. You need to be able to get around the obstacles of life, because remember that there's this compression and expansion aspect. If you feel compressed, you need to be able to escape, and if you feel expanded, you need to be able to set yourself into a kind of a bubble of protection to where you're not going to feel threatened all the time by forces that are coming in. I noticed on the road on the way here there was a lot of dingbats. How do you deal with getting around dingbats? You got to have the power to get around them, because otherwise they're going to plague you your whole life, or at least for a day. And me, I just had to make sure that, pedal the metal to the right period. And then once I got into the slot that I needed to be in, once I found out, then it all smoothed out. There was no threat. There was no worries. No worries from the cops, no worries from the truckers. But yeah, I mean, before that, you get truckers getting in the 3rd lane to pass other truckers, and suddenly they're slowing down. It's a mess. And when you encounter those places in life, you want to have a vehicle to do something. Now, in Buddhism, of course, when they mean vehicle, they're talking about a philosophy system. And I think that that's the better definition of a vehicle that we need, is a philosophy system. You need a philosophy system that has some teeth, that has some muscle. If yours doesn't have any, then you're going to need to, I guess, You're going to need to install some NOS at least. Well, what would that be? You know, I don't know. If you're a very strong Christian, maybe you learn something deeper about what Christ was saying. But bottom line is, you've got to get a little bit more power. We're never going to have that much power compared to electromagnetism, the power of stars, the power of galaxies. But we do need enough power to get through in life. And if we don't have enough, it's going to hurt us in terms of, it's going to present risk, and it's also going to probably hurt our feelings. So go work on that, and like, share, subscribe. I think this one went pretty well, so let people know. Bye.